What's going on, everybody? It's your boy BJ, the DJ. You are now tuned in to the rewrap. This is episode 11. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. The rewrap is available on all major streaming platforms. And if you haven't already tapped in with the guys at Over the Top with Chad and Tony, make sure you do so now. You can catch me on there as a recurring guest talking about movies and nostalgic wrestling. Episode 11. Let's get to it, because I feel like there is a lot to talk about for this particular topic. A lot going on in the music business, especially for rappers this day and age. A lot going on right now at the moment. So this particular episode I have titled Who Got Beef? And if you are a hip hop fan and you've been following this thing for the last couple weeks, you know that there is a big sloppy mess of a beef going on between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. I'm here for it, to be honest with you. I feel like a good healthy rap battle is necessary at times. This one is starting to get a little messy, but we'll get into that a little bit later. For this particular episode, again, I want to talk about some of the most notable hip hop beefs that have happened over the last, let's just say in my lifetime, over the last 40 years, right? Some have been, more known and more publicized than others. Some of them have just kind of flown under the radar. I've got a short list here of a couple that, or several, that have really stuck out to me during my lifetime, and those that some came out better than others. You know what I mean? Again, like I said, a good, healthy competition type rap battle is good. Some of these are starting to get a little personal, and who knows where it's going to end. Like I said, we'll get into the Kendrick and the Drake a little bit further. We'll discuss it here briefly, but we'll get into it really, really deep for the B side of this particular episode. So if I'm thinking about the rap beefs that if I'm thinking about rap beefs that stick out to me, the first one I remember being notable was probably Ice Cube versus NWA. No Vaseline has got to be the best diss record of all time. It was one man taking on probably the biggest group at that time, right? NWA. And he did it by himself. He had no help. It was no backup. It was just him going at NWA for their issue. They had a financial dispute. It led to some discussions. It led to some bad blood. NWA would diss him first on their 100 Miles and Running EP, and he decided it was best to address it. So, he single-handedly took down one of the biggest groups of all time, right? Cube, I mean, he would go on to have issues with other artists such as Cypress Hill when he was with West Side Connection, Common, there were some jabs there, but all of those kind of ended on a positive note, of course. But that's the very first rap beef that I remember sticking out. It's not the first one. It's just the first one that really stuck out to me. And then from there, you would go on, once Dre left NWA, you would get Death Row versus Ruthless. Now, this one really stuck out to me because I remember the Chronic album with the intro, and you had Snoop on there dissing Easy. And then I remember Easy's album, It's On, where he was dissing Snoop and Dre. This is where they try to diss you on Dre Day, but Dre Day only makes Easy's payday. And then I remember Easy going on Arsenio Hall talking about that every time the Chronic sold a record, he got a percentage of it. So this was a very, very intense battle, and I don't remember it making it way outside of the Chronic. Once the Chronic was done, I don't remember Snoop mentioning anything. I remember there being a couple skits on Doggy Style, some of the early Death Row releases, but I don't remember this one really escalating anything outside of music. Of course, Easy would pass shortly after, and again, I think everyone tried to patch things up at that sense. So nothing crazy in a sense from that situation. I know, the movie depicts that, Suge and Easy had a scuffle, and Easy got beat up, and all these fights and stuff took place, and Death Row had all the gangsters around. I know the movies and stuff depict that, and urban legends say things happened or whatever, but I think those stories are starting to get corrected here lately. I know the whole Suge and Vanilla Ice thing has been fabricated over the years, and now it's come out that it wasn't exactly what they say it was. So either way, Very intense, again, Death Row would bully their way around the music business for several years after that. Ruthless would kind of die out just a little bit. Bone kind of kept them going for several years. But that one, again, easy passing. Dre kind of moved on to bigger and better things. Ruthless moved on to bigger and better things. So that one just kind of dispersed itself on its own. So probably the most recognizable and most notable for your common listeners is the East and West Coast beef. Now, to me, I feel like this one started basically with Pac and Big, and Pac feeling like Big knew something about the shooting at Quad Studios. I feel like that's what kind of started this whole thing. And then the media kind of twisted it and made it a East Coast versus West Coast thing. It wasn't necessarily Pac and Big doing it. It was just kind of how the media was painting it. Then we have the infamous Source Awards situation where Suge gets on stage and says, any artist who wants to be a star, come to Death Row. And that was a jab at Diddy. In the midst of all of that happened at the Source Awards, I know Snoop gets on stage. He makes that speech where he says the East Coast don't love Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg will let it be known. And that was kind of like putting the flag in the East Coast saying, hey, West Coast is here. If you want a war, you got a war. Others would get involved with it. Dog Pound would do New York, New York. Nas would throw shots here and there. And it became a big deal, right? Unfortunately, we would lose both Pac and Big to this particular issue. It was unfortunate. This was the first time that a rap beef led to death. You know what I mean? Not that it didn't lead to violence, but it led to death. The other two that I mentioned, there were situations where people were involved and fights happened, but this one actually led to us losing two legends in their mid-20s with still a whole lot of life to live. And it's unfortunate that it got to that. But that's probably one of the most recognizable rap beefs that's happened within the last 40 years, right? One of my favorites, honestly, this was two of my favorite MCs going at it head-to-head, and that's Jay-Z and Nas. Now, this is a similar situation to what's going on with Drake and Kendrick. There had been underlined jabs for years on multiple releases. Jay would throw a jab here, Nas would throw a jab here, like, tape CD covers the trees, line the barrel up with your weak pitcher, then squeeze. Apparently that was a jab at Jay, right? And then it goes all the way back to Dead Presidents where, they had to clear that record, and Jay had said, I know who I paid, Searchlight Publishings. Come to find out, MC Search said that Nas owned that record, so Jay clearing it actually had to pay Nas in order to clear it without so it's friendly competition, but it did lead to some of the most disrespectful songs ever. Ether, to me, if No Vaseline is at the top of that list of rap beefs, diss songs, then Ether's got to be right there next to it, right? Jay would respond. Actually, Jay threw the first shot, like the first official shot. He threw it on the Takeover album, the Blueprint album, on the Takeover song, and he performed that at Summer Jam, which is a big deal, right? And Nas came back swinging, and I feel like Nas won that battle as far as song goes, because after Ether, Nas didn't say another word. Jay then had to come back with like Super Ugly. I just feel like the less you say sometimes, the better off it could be. And, Nas not even responding after that. I feel like he got the upper hand on that. So that's one of my favorites that's happened. And, they squashed it. I think when Jay was an executive at Def Jam, he ended up signing Nas, and they did some work together. I love seeing them two collaborate. I love that they have put it behind them. And I love that it's we can get that, those two great MCs together at times to make great songs. And, again, both came out unscathed, threw a couple shots here and there. And I feel like, it really set the precedent going forward on how to properly handle an issue. If you have one with somebody, you do it on wax and then you move on with your life. Right. But after that, we would get, probably one of the biggest artists to come out at some time, and that was 50 Cent. When 50 Cent hit the ground, he hit it running, and he ended up having issues with a lot of people. Now, I didn't put anything Eminem on this particular list because I don't feel like Eminem's beefs were significant enough to warrant putting in a great list, right? He had issues with people, and he really was unchallenged in a sense, if you think about it. And there's been others, there's been LL and Cannabis. I don't feel like there was enough there for them to be, mentioned in this particular group. These are the ones that I really felt like had the biggest impact, and the outcome was far greater than anything we could have imagined, right? So I do have 50 versus Murder Inc., and specifically Ja Rule, and it all stemmed from 50 being shot. Apparently it was Murder Inc. associates that shot 50. Apparently Ja and them stabbed him in a room. So it was physical altercations leading to 50 being the biggest artist in the world, 50 knowing who did it, 50 calling these guys out on record, and it led to some heated conversations on CDs. And one thing I thought was crazy is that everything that 50 Cent said about Ja Rule, how he belittled how he did music, how he belittled singing for the ladies and making the girl songs, is everything 50 would eventually do, right? He basically would con Ja Rule out of his style, and he would make, he would sell multi-million copies. He's got a Diamond album under his belt, another one that's close to Diamond, and he would make some huge records emulating the same style that Ja Rule had. So in the long run, I feel like, 50 came out on top in this particular battle. Ja Rule didn't have a bad career. Ja Rule sold a lot of records, and there was a time where you couldn't turn on the radio without there being a Ja Rule record on. But, Murder Inc. had a quick rise to fame, but it went down just as quick when 50 came on the scene. So, and I was all for that, being an huge Eminem fan and supporting anything that Aftermath and Shady put out. I was a huge fan of seeing that Green Lantern mixtape where they all went at each other and Benzino was involved and everything. But Eminem and D12 and the Shady Camp really inheriting 50 and G Unit's beef, I thought was a great thing, and it was a great moment, right? Another person who's had a lot to say with other artists has been Nicki Minaj. She's, been no stranger to beef. She's beef with everyone from Lil' Kim, Remy Ma, Cardi B, and here recently with Meg Thee Stallion. I don't think, I don't know if it's a personal thing or if it's an ego thing with Nicki. Nicki's the highest selling female of all time, right? She'll go down in history as probably the greatest female rapper ever. And I don't feel like she should stoop down to the level of some of these other female artists to even diss them or even warrant a response in some of the things that they say. I know the issue with her and Lil' Kim was more of a personal thing. It's kind of almost like the role has been reversed with Nicki now. What she did to Lil' Kim in the beginning is now being done to Nicki. Nicki's now looked at as the OG, and these younger ladies are coming in and they're killing the game, and Nicki's kind of like on the outside looking in. Not that Nicki doesn't drop fire when she does drop. It's just she's starting to be put on the back burner for some of these newer rappers. And I get it, but it doesn't always warrant a response, or you don't have to clamor for respect. I think your status is solidified. You know what I mean? So I feel like sometimes there's, Nicki just needs to bow out and just, keep it moving, enjoy the accolades, enjoy the success that you've had and not worry about what anyone else is saying or thinking or not saying. You know what I mean? Another one, we go back to 50 Cent, we could talk about 50 in Game. I was really excited when the G Unit movement started and, Nashville legend Young Buck was included in the group, and, they added Game, and I had heard of Game through JT the Bigger Figure and some of the things that were going on the West Coast and from the Murder Dog magazines and things like that. So when Dre got his hands on Game, I thought, oh man, this is going to be a problem. And then he put him with G Unit, and we started seeing, the documentary dropped and took the world by storm, similar to what 50 did, right? 50 drops and kind of just takes over everything. And then Game's rise to success was similar, right? He drops one of the greatest debut albums and he takes off. He does 4 million out the gate and things are off and running. At least we thought, right? Little did we know that, 50 wasn't really fully on board with Game joining G Unit, and it caused some tension. And next thing you know, you get a slew of responses from 50 saying that Game was never really officially part of G Unit, saying that he didn't want him in G Unit, and then before you know it, these two were throwing shots back and forth at each other. The crazy thing is this: and I love Game. I think Game is a great rapper. I think Game has made a really good career for himself. Game always seems to find the beef, and I think he does it to keep himself relevant in what's going on currently. It's not necessary. Some of the, he's beef with Joe Budden and several others. It's just not necessary, right? The 50 thing, I guess, should have happened or could have. I don't think there was a way to avoid it based on the situation. And I just feel like Game kept it going for way too long. 50 said his piece and kept it moving, and then Game just kept beating a dead horse, so to speak. But I do remember that one. It stands out specifically, because it went on for years, I felt like. And it went on just one-sided because I felt like 50 just washed his hands with it. He was still doing his thing, and Game had to do it in order to sell records and stay relevant. It cost him a contract with Aftermath. It cost him basically, a very promising career. Not that he didn't have a good one. He would go on to sell huge records and make great songs, but it cost him what could have been one of the greatest rap careers of all time. You being from the West Coast, being with Dre, I kind of feel like what happened with Kendrick could have easily have happened with Game way before. You know what I mean? So one of the first original rap beefs, what really solidified, the hip hop battle scene was what they call the Bridge Wars, and that was between KRS-One's Boogie Down production and Marley Marl's Juice Crew, right? And Marley Marl claimed that Queens was the originator of hip hop, but KRS-One and his group felt different. We would get some iconic songs from that. South Bronx, The Bridge. We would get The Bridge Is Over, and that was when KRS-One and MC Shan went at each other pretty heavy. Again, that was one of those where it was about territory. It had a purpose. It was more so in the spirit of competition. Nobody got hurt, but it was what the element of the rap battle was truly built on, right? What we're getting into now with this whole Kendrick and Drake thing, it's getting ugly and it's getting personal. To be honest with you, though, the statement that was made, by J. Cole on the first person shooter, who's the big three? Is it K Dot? Is it Aubrey and me? Like, that's an honest statement, because if you look at the current generation of rappers, I feel like Drake is a generational talent, and I feel like there will never be another Drake whatsoever. And you get these artists within certain time periods, right? Snoop was one of those artists. 50 was one of those artists. M was one of those artists. NWA were those types of artists, right? You get these artists that come through that make such a big impact, and they can't do any wrong. And Drake is that guy. How J. Cole felt like he needed to involve himself in this thing, I don't know, because I don't feel like the shot was aimed anywhere at J. Cole. I feel like it was aimed directly from Kendrick to Drake, and I feel like Drake has been throwing jabs at Kendrick for a long time now. Curious to see where it goes. Like I said, for the B side of this, we will really dive in to this whole thing, and because it's been a lot to unravel in the last couple weeks, right? And I don't feel like it's over. I don't feel like it's close at all. So, but yeah, we'll get into that here in just a few minutes with the B side. That's what I got. I wanted to talk about who got beef, some of the most, the most obvious, the most interesting, the most iconic rap beefs of the past 40 years, and that's what I got. Those are some pretty good ones. I feel like these are the ones that stand out the most. I think most people remember these, and I feel like they are probably some of the more iconic ones, right? That's what I got. This has been the Rewrap. I'm BJ the DJ. I'll catch you on the B side.